Wow. Uh, as I told Susie when she called me and told me that she wanted to honour me, this is the first time I've actually ever been honoured. And I am deeply honoured and deeply grateful to Israel Policy Forum, to Susie, to David Halperin, and especially to Hattie for making the journey here from Washington today to speak about me. A word about Hattie. Hattie is a protege of mine, and I'm very proud to be able to say that. We first worked together at the Brookings Institution when I needed somebody to set up a policy centre out in the Gulf, in Doha, and Hattie volunteered to go out there, out on the frontier, certainly the frontier of think tank world, to establish a Brookings policy centre there. And he did an extraordinary job. And from that point on, we became great friends. And I felt a very special bond with him. See, Hattie is an Arab American, and of course I'm a Jewish American. And I benefited greatly from the fact that Jewish Americans were welcomed into, not just into the government, but into the Middle East policy making process. That happened, I think, first really during the Reagan administration, but I was a great beneficiary of it. As some of you will know, I was the first Jewish Australian US ambassador to Israel. I was also the second. But that was a manifestation of the way in which this great country was willing to take a bet that Jewish Americans could work on Israel and the related subjects of the Middle East and be true to America and the American national interest. And I firmly believed that as a beneficiary of that, I had an obligation to ensure that the same could apply to Arab Americans. And Hattie is now the supreme example of that. And I couldn't be prouder of that. Hattie, we have this saying in the Jewish community that we eat our own. And God knows there have been enough people that have taken a bite out of me. They're now taking a bite out of you, my friend. But never forget that we share a common cause of peace between Israel and the Arabs, and Israel and the Palestinians. And that serves the highest interests of the United States. And I thank you for your service in the pursuit of peace, my friend. Thank you. Well, it's been a very long journey. And fortunately, it was summarized in that wonderful video that was prepared, where I gave a little commentary on my life. But as I was reflecting on what I would say tonight in accepting this honour, it really has been a very long journey. From the days in Israel in 1973, when the Yom Kippur War broke out, and I was there in Jerusalem for that traumatic experience in which it felt as if Israel's future was very much on the line. And it was at that moment that I had what you might call an epiphany, that I decided that I would devote my life to the pursuit of peace between Israel and its Arab neighbours. This mission was born in the crucible of conflict, out of a conviction that the only way in which Israel would be secure as a Jewish state and as a democratic state was through peace with its neighbours. And I didn't know how, but as you can see, I was a fairly arrogant person in those days, and it just seemed like that was going to be my mission in life. And it became a kind of magnificent obsession. In many ways, there was a feeling of destiny in that. 20 years later, there I was, and you saw the photo of me standing next to Bill Clinton in the White House as his Middle East advisor, right at the moment when it seemed like we were going to be able to achieve peace between all of Israel's neighbours. That's what I told President Clinton in my first meeting with him. I said, "Sir, if you put your mind to it, you can have 4 peace agreements in your first 4 years, and you will essentially have ended the Arab-Israeli conflict." And I will never forget him looking at me and saying, "I want to do that." And for 8 years, we pursued peace. And there were the high points of the Oslo Accords, that handshake on the south lawn of the White House between Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres. There was the Israel-Jordan peace treaty that followed soon after. There was the White Plantation Agreement, the last agreement struck between the Israelis and Palestinians that we negotiated a few years later. But then came the setbacks and the Intifada. And there I was, not on the front lines of peacemaking as I always imagined, but back in the world of conflict and hurt, and on the front lines when thousands of Israelis and Palestinians died and the whole edifice of peace that we had struggled so hard to build was destroyed. And that was a very depressing experience. But the only thing I think that kept me going was this passionate belief that one could never give up on the hope of peace. It was forged in those deeply dark days. And I went from there to the think tank world, to my partnership and friendship with Chaim Saban in building a Saban Center for Middle East Policy and the Saban Forum and US-Israel relations. And then suddenly, out of the blue, came a second chance when John Kerry decided, against all odds. I had been quoted in the New York Times as saying that there was no chance that it would be possible to make peace, that the minimum requirements of Abu Mazen were way beyond the maximum that Bibi Netanyahu could possibly give. And then the next week, John Kerry calls me up and says, "Now you can go and prove yourself wrong." And so I took it on again. And we tried, God knows we tried hard, and we failed again. And I went back into think tank life, moved to New York, and decided, as a result of a meeting that I was invited to by Charles Bronfman, probably the greatest Jewish philanthropist of our time, to join him and Salam Fayyad in addressing these young, bright-eyed, excited, optimistic, idealistic Atid scholars who were working with Israel Policy Forum. And I was so impressed with them, so impressed with the Atid program, that I, as I said in the video, became converted to the notion that this was the hope of the future and this is what I had to be part of. And so I joined with Charles and with Susie Gelman are these two great leaders of this organisation, have resurrected it and turned it into just a magnificent operation, dedicated to this same cause of peace between Israel and its Arab neighbours. And so it is that at the end of my journey, I'm reconciled to the idea that I will not see peace in my time, but that peace for Israel will surely come, that it is bound to come as a result, unfortunately, of violence and conflict. But in the end, to paraphrase Martin Luther King, the arc of the Arab-Israeli conflict is long. But I know from my own experience that it bends towards peace. And that means that we can never give up on the effort to bend that arc. If I've managed to do anything in my life, it is to help to bend that arc. And if there's anything that you who believe in the same ultimate goal of an Israel, a Jewish state, a democratic state at peace with its neighbours, particularly the Palestinians, then we have to work together to bend that arc. And so I'm very grateful for this honour. I'm especially grateful that for all the people that have accompanied me, put up with me and my obsession along the way, particularly, of course, my family, my wonderful wife, Gail, whom I deeply adore, and my wonderful children, Jake and Sarah, and my grandchildren, without whom it would have never been possible to sustain this effort. My son, Jake, once put on my computer screen a motto. It would always flash when I hit the bar, get my computer going. It said, "Hey, Dad, is there peace in the Middle East yet?" That was when he was a teenager. I guess it was more than 25 years ago. And that kind of captured. He got it. And today I look at my grandchildren and I try to think about how I will infuse them with the same purpose. I hope they will one day become Atidniks too. And they too will become pursuers of peace, Rodef Shalom, as I have been. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for this great honour.